Well, hello again, everyone. Here I am. It's been a while. Yeah, I can't believe I've just checked my statistics on YouTube, and I was shocked to see that I only did 2 videos last year, which is pretty poor. So, yeah, I'm going to aim to do more this year for you lot. I was pretty busy, in my defence, but yeah, I do want to do some more content because I enjoy it. So this video is going to be quite a quick one, but I wanted to just provide a few tips and tricks really just on editing 360 photos. As many of you may know, I have got a course available on 360 photography, so basically starting from right from the beginning, sort of choosing the equipment, whether to use a one-shot camera, a DSLR mirrorless, how to edit with one shot, how to edit with DSLR mirrorless, and so on and so on and so on. I wanted to just touch on one area that can have quite a few different techniques applied to it, and that is HDR. Many of you may know that HDR is pretty much a necessity when it comes to 360 virtual tour photography. Yes, you can use a flash, and I remember a while ago I saw a video by Nathan Cool, who's absolutely brilliant. So Nathan, if you're watching, hi, hope you're doing well. And he used flash to do 360 photos. Now I've given that a go. It's really, really great, really, really great. So I will link to that video in the description below. But for my work, I generally tend to do quite large businesses, and I did attempt to use the flash on one of them, and I thought, God, this is going to take me best part of a day, maybe 2 days to do the whole tour. So for the smaller tours, yes, it's definitely worth considering using flash because it does give you far more accurate colors. However, what I'm going to do is just show you a few techniques, basically showing you how to get the most out of your images to prepare them for HDR photography. If you do like what you see, then I will link to my training course in the description below. I do appreciate that money is tight for a lot of people, but there is some really, really useful information in there, and the feedback's been absolutely incredible from people. So if you're interested in that, then do check it out. So yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to jump on the computer, share my screen with you, and just show you through mainly how to prepare your images for HDR processing. I probably won't go deeply into the actual HDR processing side of things because that can be done in many, many, many different pieces of software. I personally use a program called SNS HDR, which is really, really incredible. I'm surprised a lot of people still don't mention it when I see HDR stuff posted in Facebook groups and all that sort of stuff. Maybe it's because for quite a long time it wasn't available for Mac. In fact, speaking of which, I've just bought the Mac Mini M4 Pro, so I've now moved from PC to Mac, which has been an interesting transition, but I'm absolutely loving it. It's a great little piece of kit. So if any of you are interested, I might do a little review on that. So what we're going to do, let's jump on the computer. We'll get some sample images up, and I'll first of all show you how to prepare them for HDR processing. It's not going to be a long thing, but it does make a massive difference. So let's go. Okay, so I've imported all of my 360 photos into Lightroom. Just to go through how I take the 360 photos very, very quickly, I use the Sony a7 IV camera with a 12mm Samyang fisheye lens attached to it. And I'll bracket each shot with 3 brackets. So one underexposed by 2 stops, a normal exposure, and then 2 stops over. But what I'll also do is I will underexpose overall. Instead of exposing for my middle shot, what I want to really be doing is making sure I'm exposing for the brightest shot. So if you expose for the middle one, the brightest one, in my experience, is going to be way, way, way too bright. So when you take your set of 3, if we just take the first 3 as an example here, you'll see the brightest exposure doesn't have any blown out highlights. So that's quite important. And we'll go through that in a second. But when I import, I also add a develop profile, which just adds a tiny, tiny bit of sharpening, chromatic aberration removal, and a bit of noise reduction as well. So let's just move me over here. And then I will click on import. And there we go. Okay, so if I just open up the first image here and then click on develop, what we basically want to do is, I'm going to pop me up here now, so I'm going to be moving all around the screen so I can get to all the buttons. I think I'll be safe up there. So it's the first time I've actually included myself on a screen recording, but some people have said to me it's nice to see someone's face when they're doing a video, so here I am. So right, what I want to do is click on this first image here, and we need to set the white balance. Now we can see that we've got all 27 shots included in the thumbnails at the bottom, and the way I've done that is basically just by adjusting this bar here. So if you, by default, I think you'll find that there'll be a scroll bar, which is a bit of a pain because then you have to scroll across all your images. So I always set it so I've got each image like so. There we go, included in the bottom row. So what I want to do first is, as I say, set the white balance. So let's find a reference image. I'm going to use this one here and do Command A. If I get these shortcuts wrong, then do forgive me because I'm still getting used to the Mac shortcuts. It's a nightmare coming from PC to Mac when it comes to shortcuts, but hey ho. What I generally do is I'll give auto a shot. So let's click on auto and see what it does. That's not too bad actually. It's done a pretty good job. Yeah. Okay, let's go with that. So once we've clicked auto, then we want to click on custom. Okay, and then what that will do is it will update the white balance for all images that are selected. That's being done because I have auto sync switched on here. You'll find by default in Lightroom, this isn't switched on. So you need to just toggle this on here. And then that will automatically sync any changes that you make to your photos. So no, see, I've done it already. There we go. Just click on that image. And what I'm going to do is click on the first one. And this is basically where we want to adjust the shadows and the highlights for each image. So I'm going to click on this one here and then Command click. Yes, I've got it right. On all of the brightest exposures coming along here. There we go. Now, what I'm going to do is reduce the highlights down. I generally tend to do the same settings for each image. So I'll reduce the highlights, open the shadows, and then if I hold Alt and click on exposure, it will turn everything black. But then what I'll do is I'll raise the exposure and we'll see we've got these white bits coming in. Now that's basically blown out information, so we don't want that. So my aim here is to brighten this image up just a tad. I normally tend to, on my histogram, not have the exposure in the middle. I do personally, and this is personal taste, prefer slightly brighter images. So I tend to expose to the right a bit. But that's probably a little bit too bright. So let's bring it down. There we go. Just there. So then let's do Alt click again, and we'll just check our highlights. Let's bring those down ever so, just a bit more. A little bit's not too bad. So that's now set the exposure for this one here. Outside, we'll see that it wasn't a massively bright day, so you may need to adjust this accordingly for your particular shot. But also, it's worth checking the histogram in the top here. So you'll see here again with the blacks. If I click on Alt and click on the blacks, if I move it down, this is all turning completely black. Let go of Alt. You'll see there that's very, very dark. But we want to basically, what we're doing here is just setting the contrast level. So by setting your black point, so you move the black slider just until these marks start to appear there, and then the same with the whites, but we don't want to increase that anymore. So yeah, we're good there. Now, what we want to do after that is click on the middle exposure of the first set, and then again hold Command. Can't remember what it is on PC. Then we click on all of the middle exposures, like so. And then with this one, I pretty much always do exactly the same thing. So I reduce the highlights, open the shadows, and then I'll just eyeball the image. So I don't want it too dark. But again, I don't want the outside here getting too bright. So I'm going to increase this ever so slightly, just like so. and then we want to hold Alt and just check the highlights in here, make sure nothing's blowing out too much. And then I might reduce the whites down a little bit just to get rid of some of that. There we go. And yeah, that's that one set. And then finally, we've got the darkest exposure. Now this one is very dark, actually. You'll probably find that if you have done your exposure correctly, I probably shot this one too dark on site, but that's the beauty of shooting in RAW. I didn't mention that earlier. You must shoot in RAW. Do not do this in JPEG because you will not be able to make this level of adjustment on there. So let's command click on, I had to check what it was called then, on all of these images. And then what we can do is, again, alt click on the highlights, and we can see that we are still blown out. If I bring it down all the way, then it's just this light here is really, really, really bright compared to these ones here. So I'm going to ignore that light in the middle, and I'm going to set the exposure for the other ones. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much done. That's what I wanted to show you, because a lot of people I've seen do tend to take their HDR photos initially on site too brightly. So they have a really super, super, super bright exposure for their brightest shot. And then they struggle to recover those highlights. And then when they bring it into the HDR software, everything's completely blown out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at the results. So those images have all been processed. So let's click on File. So I've got one of those ultra wide monitors here, so I have to look all the way over here. Just click on Lightroom first, then File, Import. There we go. So these are my processed images. What I'll do here is I will turn the develop settings off because I don't want to apply those settings again. Otherwise, the sharpening might get too crunchy, as to say. And then import. So once they're imported, we can take a look at them, and the result is pretty good. If I zoom in, we can see we've got a really, really nice result. It's a nicely balanced exposure. The exterior is nicely exposed. Yeah, it's looking very, very nice. But one thing we need to do after this, we don't need to do too much of it on this one at all, to be honest, but I do like to do some sort of extra processing, as to say. So what I'll do is I'll select all of them, and I'll just have a little sort of just play around. I don't think we want to brighten it up too much, as to say. So what I'll do is I'll hold Alt and just check the whites. So yeah, we're good there. We can see this patch here, we're blowing out slightly. So we've got to be careful of that. We can always reduce the highlights down a bit more, but that can take away from the brightness of the image, so we don't really want to do that too much. And then the same for the blacks, so let's just reduce this down and just find that point there. There we go. And again, we need to make sure that we've got this auto sync clicked on here, so the changes that we're making are happening to all of the photos. If you don't do that, then you're going to end up with seam lines when you come to stitch your images. So that's a very, very, very important thing to remember. It's called global adjustments. So make sure that you're doing global adjustments. Once you've stitched your image, then you can do some local adjustments, which is things like, if I just deselect these, getting the brush tool and painting in some, some extra exposure and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, we don't want to do that on these images, otherwise you do risk bleeding over the edges, and then you'll get these horrible lines down your photo when you come to stitch it. So yeah, what you would do from here, as I mentioned a second ago, is just export these final edited photos. You can even do sort of some color adjustments, if you wanted to sort of increase the greens, as to say. Over there, you see we've got some nice green plants in here. We can increase the green. We can change the hue slightly, which I sometimes do for greens, just to make them pop just a little bit more. You've got to be careful, you've got to watch your image. But again, I probably wouldn't do this on this set of photos. Wait until you stitch them and then globally edit the whole thing. Okay. I think that's a wrap on this bit. Well, I hope you found that useful. I think with HDR, some people, especially if they're using a DSLR mirrorless camera as opposed to a one-shot, yes, one-shots are much faster. But once you get to grips with your workflow, it can be done really quickly. And I would highly recommend leveraging shortcuts. So if you've got one of these, so I've got the Logitech MX Master 3, this one is. I'm hoping to get the 3S soon. And then obviously keyboard shortcuts as well. You can really fly through stitching and processing and all that sort of stuff really quickly. So yeah, do leave any comments below. Feel free to ask questions. I do try and reply to as many comments as possible. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I have noticed when I look at my statistics that a huge percentage of people aren't subscribed that view my videos. So if you want to see more content, and again, I promise I'm going to try and do more this year, then please hit the subscribe button. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you all very soon.